I'm your host, Kinetic, and you're watching GameOnEnd. Hello, welcome to our add-on series. Today, we'll take a look at the add-on oPie. We're using the add-on control panel to enable and disable as we go, so let's take a look. Alright, now oPie is an add-on that's kind of unique. It works off of rings. Now, it comes with some default things out of the box. There are, of course, a lot of options here of how these rings behave. But to start with, we just need something as an example. Okay, so let's get something up here. Okay, so we can see here, let's start with the specializations in travel. By default, this is bound to Alt plus H. You can, of course, change these to anything you like. So if we hold down Alt and H, this gives us the default ring. Now you can do a lot of customization to these, but they have a lot built in already. Specifically, a lot of these menus will change dynamically based on what class, what spec you're on, different things like that. So this ring, by default, as you can see, comes up with our specs and our travel, as it was called. So this quickly gives us a way to change specs, and then also has by default loaded in whatever things this given character has for travel. So right now we just have our Hearthstone. If you're on a higher level character, this would also show Garrison Hearthstone, Dalaran Hearthstone. So all these things that may be eating up spaces on your action bars here can be removed and quickly accessed from just a hotkey. So we'll pull the menu back up here and let's take a look at how these rings behave. So we have the basic settings here, and we can then specify a certain ring if we would like these options to be different for that. So the specializations in travel, let's choose this one, and let's say that we would like this to always pop up under our mouse. So versus being here in the center, now if we hit the hotkey, it'll pop up under our mouse. So wherever we are, instead of having to move our mouse to the center of the screen, you can have that pop up right there under you. So there's a few other things. You can set additional hotkeys to what they call slices of the pie, which are basically the different buttons that are available in the ring. You can have it so that things activate on left clicks or not. You can also have it show if things have limited use. You can have it show how many you have. Just a lot of options to do here. You can hide the tooltips when you hover over buttons if you know what those things are and you just would like it a little cleaner, a little simpler. You can also have it do things like enlarging whichever item you're over. So as you can see, this goes up a little bit bigger or not. You can turn that functionality off. You can also have what they call nested rings, in which case means that a ring can have one of the slices be another ring. So if, say, we were on a mage and you have your portals and teleports, well, you could have a hotkey that brings up either the, say, teleports or portals, but then when you hover over that, that would open up another ring of all of your teleports available or all of your portals available. You could also set up something similar to this where you just have the primary Hearthstone here, but when you hover over it, it may open up a smaller ring with, say, your Garrison Hearthstone, Dalaran Hearthstone. And you can even add in like custom items such as like an engineer's, a mole machine or something along those lines. And that's where we get into custom rings. So if we go down to custom rings, we can either open up the default ones and we can make changes to those, or we can create a new ring. So to show how we do that, let's do a modification first. So if we bring up, let's take a look at the target markers one. So we have all of the target markers here. Let's take a look at the binding for that. So that is Alt plus R. So if you would like to add an item to any ring, you just click this Add New Slice, and then you have basically everything available that can be added to these rings. So let's say in addition to the target markers, let's just find something here, it doesn't really matter. But let's say we have a macro, to follow a character, or to set them as your focus. You could add that in. That would be a nice thing of being able to put a marker on your main tank, and then right then click the macro to add them as your focus if you're a healer. You can also in the rings, you can add in switching, just like we had in the ring, the switching specs. You can also add in switching equipment sets. So you could make a separate ring or just a ring within a ring of, say, you could have this, but then you could make this ring open up another smaller ring, which would have the equipment sets for your various sets that are saved for this. So say we have some sets saved for Mistweaver, our healing spec. Let's say we have 2 different gear sets. So we open up here, and we can't do it on this character yet, but let's say we had 2 equipment sets saved for different healing situations, such as like raid healing or Mythic Plus. You could have those 2 gear sets saved in there, and then right then, when you jump into your spec, you can click that, and then that would switch us over to Mistweaver, and then reopen that binding when we get into that spec, and then right there, choose between our equipment sets to swap into without having to go into extra menus or opening up character sheets and stuff like that. So let's add, for the example here, a raid marker. So we just double click, that will add that item to here, and then of course we can click into it and choose things such as when it shows. So you can have things that only show up for certain specs. So if we added in, say, those gear sets into a ring, we can have it so that those gear sets don't show up when we're in a different spec, so that we can't accidentally switch into, say, our healing gear when we're in a tanking spec. So let's take a look at this now. So we have this opening up in the center. Let's go ahead and change that. Okay, so we have the defaults, and then we also have the one that we added in, and they've given us a clear button as well, but we can now select the world marker and leave a marker on the ground. Now, of course, we'd have to be in a raid to do this, but right, so we can mark, and then we can clear all. Okay. So as you can see, it's a lot faster than having to target somebody and right-click and do target markers. That type of stuff. If we were going through a raid, we could just quickly select the tanks out of our group or the healers or whatever we needed to do and quickly select and mark them. And then if we want to change something back, we can simply select the item . And then if we want to make the change back, we can always go into our rings, select the item, and then delete that slice. So let's create a new ring. So just as a test, we've made this here. We can have this as a thing that's only available to this character. We can have this as a thing that's only available to monks. Or we can have this available to all characters. So just for this test, let's go ahead and do this. Now we need to add items to the ring. Okay. So we only have one heal right now. But just for the example, let's go ahead and add a second item here. Okay. Now we can go to our ring, have it centered, activate on left click. All right. Now we can also do like things like offsetting of the rings. So if we have it opening at the mouse, but we still want to be able to see what we're mousing over, we can have it offset, say to the right. We can show cooldowns. Now let's bind this to something. Okay, so we click here and okay, let's bind this to something here. We've just put it on a quick hotkey. And we now have, as you can see, a ring that opens at the offset that we specified. Okay. So as you can see, we have this offset. So you can get really creative with this. Obviously, if you have these buttons assigned, you can, of course, go into these rings and assign hotkeys to things. So we can basically come in. We can also have things that only show under certain conditionals. This starts getting into a lot more advanced things, but we could have, say, a ring that shows up for mounting, and we can have it only show when we're out of combat. And then we could make a separate ring that's on the same hotkey that only shows up when we're in combat. So for different type things, like say on a druid, you could have travel form or something that can be used when you're in combat. So if you're out of combat, you have it pop up and it shows you your mounts, and if you're in combat, it pops up and shows you your travel form or ghost wolf or something similar. Now, most of these conditionals are things that all exist in the macro interface. So if you're familiar with making macros, you've probably run into a lot of these things, such as whether your target exists, whether you're in combat, things like that. So let's test the example they have here. Okay, so we've added the conditional to Tiger Palm that it only shows when we're in combat. So right now we're out of combat, so that ability is hidden. But if we jump into combat, then this ability would be shown like this. So there's a lot you can do here. It can really get as advanced as you would like, or stay as simple as you would like. So a lot of interesting things that you could do with this. Say as a healer, you could have a couple of your cooldowns on a hotkey, and if you're healing a tank or something, you could have them targeted, and you could be casting your hotkey to, heal, 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 and then you need a cooldown, and maybe you're not sure which one is off cooldown right now, so you could hit that hotkey and get a list right there of all of your cooldowns if you've added them to a ring, all your major, tank cooldowns or whatever, and you could have them all right there. And if you have this option shown to show the cooldown numbers and recharge numbers and things like that, you could pull that up and you could see right there, okay, I have this one off cooldown, and you can quickly select the thing you need. And as you use things like that, you can get faster and faster with it, but the time that it can save you of scanning your action bars to know, which thing you have available right now, if you need a crowd control or something like that. A lot of times being able to see on a character that has multiple cooldowns, especially like on tanks where you may have 3 or 4 different cooldowns, it may be hard to know which one you still have available. And if you have them all on your action bars, that's great, you can see them, but even if they're all side by side, you would still have to quickly look. And let's say if you have 4 cooldowns all here side by side, you have to look down and see which one you have available right now, and then hit the hotkey for that. And you'd have to have 4 separate hotkeys for those abilities, whereas this could let you assign one key to a ring that has all 4 of those cooldowns, and you can right there at your mouse wherever you are, without losing your target, without moving or changing anything. You can right there bring up the thing and see the thing that you need to use. And even if you still have that ability on a mouse button, such as if we bring this menu up, I can still hit my hotkey for that ability. It's not forcing you into a mouse clicking type gameplay. It's just giving you visibility of things that you may not be able to quickly scan when you've got 30 things on your action bars. This of course comes in much more handy for on-use items such as potions, things you may not want to waste a hotkey on, like consumables and stuff like that, versus having to drag, say, if you carry around multiple foods based on your role, if you may have haste food for healing, or crit food for DPS and whatever, you can have all those foods in your bags and put them all on one ring, and even have them only show up based on spec. So as we saw before, if we created a ring for foods, and let's imagine that these are consumables, we could have these items on a ring, we could select it, and then have it only show for the spec that that food is for. So we could have one ring that shows up and could have our haste food and our crit food, but it only shows us the food that we want to see when we're in our given spec, so we don't accidentally eat the wrong food. We can also quickly, when we're at the auction house, pull up and see what we have. If we have the counts shown on the consumables, we can see how many we have left in our bags. There's no like opening up our bags and doing a count or a check here to see what we have. So a lot of just really cool things that can be done with this add-on. And in another add-on spotlight, we showed the add-on mask, and this is one last little thing. So we'll bring up ACP here, add-on control panel, and I've installed a mask option for oPie, which adds in one little cool touch, which is that we can now skin our oPie rings. So if we bring up the menu here, we can bring up oPie, and we can tell it that we would like a different skin, and we now have a different skin here. So if you take a look at the mask add-on feature, you'll see there's really unlimited options for how you can skin buttons in the game. And this is one nice little extra feature of if you're just trying to get these rings to match in with the look and feel of the rest of your interface. This is definitely an add-on you want to install as well. And that will give you the option to skin these rings, which is another great thing here. So there's a lot of information to unpack there, a lot of tweaking that can be done. I would recommend you play with it, test out making a ring, test out using the default ones to see the things that are available. If you install this on a higher level character, you'll see these rings really fill out with a lot of nice information. Try out the default rings. The thing I would suggest is that by default, come in and go to the ring bindings and unbind anything that you're not going to use to start off with, so that you're not accidentally getting rings opening up when you least expect them. Because if you don't use these things, then you don't want the Minimap tracking button to open up accidentally when you don't mean to do that. That will do it for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, remember, pressing the like button is absolutely free. Subscribe and stay tuned for more Game on End.